Alright, so last week I posted this little conversion project to my Instagram, and this is the Meteor65. I simply just flipped it over, made it into a pusher configuration, as you can see here, and actually flipped over the props and the whole frame and the flight controller, and I've also changed the orientation of the battery so that instead of it going front to back, it's now going side to side. As you see here, the camera's here. So overall, it's a pretty simple conversion. It didn't take me too long. It was maybe about 15 minutes of work. I did have to solder the antenna here to the top part of the board because in the original configuration the antenna is on this side of the board. I just simply desoldered it on one side and it just moved it to the other side because it's the connection for the antenna actually goes all the way through the board. So that's the only thing that I had to solder. Everything else was basically just unplugging stuff, flipping the props over, and then configuration changes in Betaflight. And then the one thing that I did do, because I didn't really have a good way of mounting the camera, I actually just mounted it here with some hot glue here, and it's a flexible craft hot glue. You can see it's colored, and I think it's made for fabric, I believe. It's stuff that I've had lying around for like, it's really super old, like 20 years old, so some of you guys are like going to ask me for a link for this. If someone knows where this is on Amazon or somewhere that people could typically get something like this, let me know. It's not your typical hot glue where it's really hard. If this camera takes a hit, you can see here it flexes, and I've actually crashed this a fair amount, and actually there's a scratch on the casing here now from crashing in the garage, and the camera hasn't come off yet, so it's just on this one leg of the frame there and it seems to be fine. It's also, the camera's relatively protected, as you can see here, so even if it should land like this, most of the time it's not going to hit directly. You have to land exactly at this point right here. It's going to usually hit the one side or another, and that's probably why it survived all the bashing that I've done on this one. Like I said, I did just take the video transmitter of the camera and I flipped it to the other side of the board so that the video transmitter now is on this side of the board there. As you can see, the camera solders to the video transmitter there, and then the antenna comes out the back there. So it just sits under the battery tray like that, just between the flight controller board and the battery tray, and it actually fits perfectly like that. So that's why it was a pretty easy conversion, didn't really take a whole lot to do. And the reason I wanted the battery to go sideways, and I think you're gonna get some arguments out in the comments there as to what's best. Honestly, it really depends on what's best for you. Some people might like this, some people might not like this. Some people prefer the battery front to back and on the bottom, or maybe you prefer front to back on top, or maybe you prefer it side to side on the bottom or the top. So there's basically 4 options you can do: top, bottom, side to side, or front to back. And the only difference is the way the CG feels when you're flying. So in this particular configuration here, where you have the weight, basically the battery is the main weight, and then the motors. The rest of the stuff is kind of central, like the flight controller and the frame itself. But the way it's distributed on the frame is going to be in the motors and the battery. That's where most of the weight is. So when you have your battery side to side like this compared to where the camera is, you're going to have more responsiveness on the pitch axis, because the center of mass is distributed along this axis this way, so there isn't as much mass on the pitch axis compared to the roll axis now when the battery is oriented side to side. So you're going to have more pitch authority or pitch responsiveness. And so people that do racing prefer this more because this gives you more better control of speed, whereas you don't really need as much roll responsiveness in racing. Pitch responsiveness is more important to control your speed. For freestyle, it may not matter. It really depends on you and what you like. So again, what's best is very subjective. You may or may find that this is not going to be for you. Now, some people do comment that running the battery on the bottom is better. I tend to disagree. I did try that. If you want to run the battery on the bottom, what you can do is run a rubber band on the other side of the flight controller here, across, actually, I'm sorry, on this way. I do this way here. On the front here, run on the other side of the flight controller where that screw is, and then run, basically we'll have two things of the rubber band going like along this, the flight controller front to back like this, and then you can run your battery this way. So the argument is that your mass is going to be now closer to the prop line. So the battery's going to sit like this, and you see where the prop line is. That's where your center of thrust is going to be, and that supposedly is supposed to be better, according to some people. Now, I did fly it like this. I tried that. I didn't really like the way this felt, and I don't know exactly why. Having the battery on top for me, I felt that felt better for me. I think it's because when the battery is on the bottom compared to where the camera is, it felt like it was there was a little bit of a pendulum effect on the pitch axis for me. I didn't feel like it had, I was in as much control compared to the battery on top. So this is just my opinion. You know, I encourage you to try all four battery orientations to see which one you feel is better for you, because it's all about, you know, how you fly and what feels good for you. You know, I tend to not listen to what other people say anyway. I just test things out and see what I like, and a lot of times what I like tends to be not in line with most other pilots for whatever reason. I just, you know, have my own opinions, and the way things feel for me is just the way it feels for me. That's only I can explain it. It's just it's very subjective, and you got to go with what feels good for you. Just because someone says that whatever orientation is the best doesn't mean you should fly it, even though you feel like it doesn't feel good for you. You should still fly it just because someone else told you to. I don't know. If you're one of those people that are like that, then yeah, you know, just follow the crowd and do whatever someone else tells you to do. Anyways, the last thing on this conversion is, as you can see, I did put a little piece of foam here on the bottom, because if you don't do this, the entire board is completely exposed on the bottom. So if you do happen to land on something really hard, as you know, a lot of times you'll hover over something and disarm, and it'll just drop onto something. So if it's something hard, for example, then that could possibly knock a chip off or something like that. Instead of you know, using a small little thin piece of foam, it's like just this little stuff that looks like this. And this stuff comes with, I don't know, I think it came with a camera or something like that. It just has stuff lying around. I used that. You can use something else if you want. You could 3D print something. You could use conformal coating, for example. That could also protect the bottom if you want to keep the weight as low as possible. But I just did a quick and dirty. I didn't really want to spend a whole lot of time messing with it, so that's what I did. And that seems to be working pretty good for me. I can pretty much run along the ground. I can actually just, you know, run right along the ground like this and fly it, or just hovercraft it, no problem, no worries, because it's not really scraping along anything, and you can go into hovercraft mode in this one if you want, because the battery is on top as well. So that's another benefit of this orientation. Alright, so the last benefit obviously is going to be a little bit of weight savings. So let's show you what this is. And oh, by the way, I totally forgot to tell you this. I did switch the motors out, so this is coming in at 19.7 grams, but this is the 0603 motor. Let's see here. Yeah, this is the 0603 19,000 kV motor. This is the latest revision with the PCB, and this one has the ball bearings, not the bushings. So it's a very smooth motor. But in terms of weight savings over the 0802, it's not a whole lot. I think it's like 0.4, 0.3 grams, something like that. So overall weight savings over the 0802 is maybe a gram or a gram and a half. It's not a whole lot of weight savings. But I don't know, I feel like this motor is better for indoor flying at like gates, the kind of thing. The 0802 is going to be better for like outdoors and acro, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's kind of my take on that. I have another set of these 0603s. I'll be trying on a different configuration. I'll have more data on that a little later, but let me also show you what the weight is with the battery. And together with the 300 milliamp hour battery, it's coming in about 28 grams. Anyway, so this is just one possible configuration of this upside down setup, or pusher configuration. There's a lot of, I've seen other people do different mods as well. You could, if you want to save more weight, you could cut off the bottom part of the duct here, make that a little bit thinner, cut off some of these spokes if you want. It'll actually weaken the frame. Some guys have actually even cut off the battery tray. If you're going to do the bottom mounted battery here, then you don't need that. You can get rid of that and then use some sort of a canopy here. And if you want to figure out a better way of mounting the camera, you can use a canopy mount and also get rid of the battery tray and run the battery on the bottom. That's another way you can do that. Also, I've seen people get rid of the plugs and just cut the wire so you don't have this extra, all this twisted wire, the plugs and everything has extra weight you don't necessarily need. So if you really want to cut down weight, you can do that as well. Of course, this is all a bunch of extra work that I didn't really want to do, didn't have time to do. I just wanted to do a quick 15 to 20 minute conversion, and this is basically what I came up with. I think this is kind of the lazy conversion here. You could definitely go all out and do a whole lot of other stuff to improve the weight, flight characteristics, blah blah blah. You can go to town if you want, but yeah, this was not meant to be a comprehensive sort of review. In fact, what I'm actually doing is I've given all these suggestions to BetaFPV already to come up with a version of the Meteor65 that has obviously with a better camera mounting solution, maybe a different canopy, a bottom mounted battery option, for example, maybe some different props. A lot of different things I've suggested to them, so we'll see. They are thinking about it. But yeah, if you want to see BetaFPV come up with a bind and fly model of the Meteor65 already ready to go in this pusher configuration, leave me a comment down below and I'll pass those comments on to BetaFPV, and hopefully they'll listen to those. And you guys are obviously big drivers, and they do listen to community feedback, so it's very important that if you are very interested in something like this, leave a comment, and hopefully we'll get them to do something like that. Anyway guys, rambled long enough about this video. Actually, I'm going to do another conversion of this here with the same Meteor65 frame. This is the frame that I recommend over the other frames out there, like the Happy Model frame or the Newbie Drone frame. It's just because where the motor mounts here in the bottom of the duct is the most distance, that allows the prop to not, allows to be inside the duct instead of sticking out. So on the Happy Model, depending on what prop you use, they'll stick out a little bit, so basically there's a chance that it might catch on something, especially if you're running low to the ground. But this is the best frame, I think, for the pusher configuration. And so I'm going to do another video later with the Mobula 6 parts with the Meteor65 frame, and you'll see that that's actually, I think that's going to be lighter than this one with the 0802 motor. So if you're, I already anticipated that people are going to ask me about the Mobula 6 and converting that, and I am working on that. That'll be in the next video. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.